They're supposed to be working, but they wouldn't miss a day. So I just want to thank everybody for that very much. And we're here today to discuss a sweeping, unprecedented, and historically successful.
Breaking news tonight. The FBI has just launched a major operation across the country, exposing what officials are calling a sophisticated criminal.
47 a.m. Miami, Florida. The city slept. Coastal humidity hung thick over Biscayne Boulevard. 38 federal vehicles moved through darkness without sirens. 7 tactical teams. One target. Years of planning compressed into a single moment. The Somali Port Authority's administrative office looked ordinary. Faded signage, blacked out windows, a modest 2-story building that processed shipping paperwork. But what federal agents were about to discover would expose one of the largest weapons trafficking and money laundering operations ever uncovered on American soil.
$290 million in cash. 473 military-grade weapons.
A network stretching from Mogadishu to Miami's waterfront. This wasn't just corruption. This was a shadow government operating inside our borders. Hit like so, this story reaches more people who need to understand what was really happening in our ports. The investigation didn't begin with guns or explosions. It began with numbers. October 2022. A financial analyst at the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network noticed something unusual. Wire transfers flowing through a small import-export company registered to the Somali Port Authority showed patterns that defied logic. $3 million moving in, $4 million moving out, always just under the $10 million threshold that triggers automatic federal scrutiny. Always routed through shell companies Dubai, Mombasa, Cayman Islands. The analyst flagged 12 transactions in a single week. Within 72 hours, the file landed on Special Agent Marcus Holloway's desk at the FBI Miami field office. Now, Holloway had 14 years tracking transnational criminal networks, cartels, terror financing cells, human trafficking rings. But this case felt different from the moment he opened the file. The Somali Port Authority had been operating in Miami since 2017. Officially registered as a liaison office to facilitate legitimate shipping between East African nations and American ports. They had diplomatic credentials, official letterhead. They hosted meetings with Port of Miami administrators and customs officials. On paper, they were exactly what they claimed to be. But the financial data told a different story. Between January 2021 and September 2023, over $600 million had moved through accounts linked to the organization. For a small liaison office with 7 employees, the numbers were impossible. Comment exposed if you believe diplomatic credentials should never protect criminals. Holloway assembled a task force within days. FBI financial crime specialists who could trace money through the darkest corners of international banking. ICE Homeland Security investigations, agents who knew maritime smuggling routes, analysts familiar with East African drug corridors, U.S. Customs officials who understood port vulnerabilities. By December 2022, they had placed the Biscayne Boulevard office under 24-hour surveillance. Cameras captured faces. License plate readers logged every vehicle. Phone intercepts began picking up conversations in Somali, Arabic, and broken English. What emerged was a picture of military discipline. The primary figure was Hassan Abdi Koronto, 53 years old, diplomatic credentials as the Port Authority's administrative director. Surveillance showed Koronto arriving every morning at 7 sharp. Pressed suits, leather briefcase, meetings with shipping executives, port officials, local business owners. Everything appeared legitimate, but phone intercepts revealed something else entirely. Coded language about shipments. References to packages and deliveries that never appeared in official manifests. Conversations with individuals in Mogadishu, Nairobi, and Istanbul discussing quantities, prices, and transfer points. Koronto wasn't running a liaison office, he was running a smuggling empire. By March 2023, agents had mapped the network structure. The Somali Port Authority office served as the American hub for a trafficking operation that moved weapons from Eastern Europe into Africa. The return flow funneled drug money and conflict minerals back through Miami. Containers arrived at the Port of Miami labeled as agricultural equipment. Textiles, machinery parts, Customs inspections were avoided through falsified documents and strategically placed bribes. The containers were rerouted to a warehouse facility in Hialeah, 12 miles northwest of downtown Miami. From there, weapons were stripped from concealment compartments and prepared for shipment to Somalia. Various militia groups paid premium prices. Al-Shabaab affiliates paid even more. The return flow brought cash. Stacks of bills earned from heroin, trafficking routes running from Afghanistan through East Africa into European markets. Type yes if you want to know how deep this network really went. The scale was staggering beyond anything investigators had anticipated. Between 2019 and 2023, the network had moved over 800 weapons. AAK pattern rifles, PKM machine guns, RPG launchers, American-made M4 carbines stolen from military stocks in Eastern Europe. The cash flow exceeded $400 million. Koronto had managed to keep it invisible by exploiting the complexity of international shipping, the volume of legitimate trade at Miami's ports, the protection offered by diplomatic status. But the network had vulnerabilities. June 2023, an informant emerged from within the operation itself. Ibrahim Youssef worked at the Hialeah warehouse. Low-level employee. He believed he was working for a legitimate import company processing farm equipment and textiles. One evening, while unloading a container marked as farm equipment from Turkey, he saw weapons, not hunting rifles, military har. When he asked questions, he was threatened. His family was mentioned. The message was clear. Fearing for his safety, Youssef contacted ICE. He agreed to cooperate. He wore a wire. He took photographs. He provided shipping schedules and container numbers. His intelligence gave federal agents the final pieces they needed. By August 2023, the FBI had mapped the entire operation with surgical precision. 7 key individuals, 4 primary locations, the Biscayne Boulevard office, the Hialeah warehouse, a storage unit in Opelika, a private residence in Coral Gables where Koronto lived. Financial records showed money was laundered through 17 shell companies, registered in Delaware, Wyoming, and Nevada. Accounts in 6 different countries. The network had bribed at least 3 Port of Miami employees and 2 customs inspectors. It had used encrypted messaging apps, burner phones, face-to-face meetings to avoid surveillance. It had operated with precision and absolute paranoia. Share this video so more people understand what was operating in our ports. The decision to move came in early November 2023. U.S. Attorney's Office prosecutors secured federal warrants charging Koronto and 6 associates. Conspiracy to traffic weapons, money laundering, bribery of public officials, violations of the Arms Export Control Act. The FBI South Florida Task Force coordinated with ICE, ATF, and U.S. Customs for simultaneous raids. The plan was precise. All locations would be hit at the same moment to prevent communication and destruction of evidence. Zero room for mistakes. November 17th, 2023, 4:47 a.m. The night was still dark when federal vehicles rolled into position. At the Biscayne Boulevard office, 2 tactical vans parked at the rear entrance. Unmarked sedans blocked the front. At the Hialeah warehouse, an FBI hostage rescue team surrounded the facility with armored vehicles and breaching equipment. At the Coral Gables residence, agents positioned along the tree-lined street. At the Opelika storage unit, a smaller team prepared bolt cutters and battering rams. Radio silence held across all channels. Then, at exactly 4:52 a.m., the order came through encrypted channels. Execute! The Biscayne Boulevard office was breached first. A battering ram struck the reinforced front door once. Twice, the door gave way. Flashbangs detonated inside. Noise, light, chaos designed to disorient. FBI agents poured through, shouting commands, sweeping rooms with tactical precision. The office was empty of people. No one had arrived yet. But what agents found in the first 30 seconds made them call for additional units immediately. The main administrative area looked normal. Desks, computers, filing cabinets, standard office equipment. But behind a false wall in the rear conference room, accessible through a hidden door, was a space that didn't match any building plans on file. The hidden room was approximately 20 feet by 15 feet. No windows, climate controlled. Inside, agents discovered something that would become the centerpiece of the federal case. Cash. Mountains of it. Comment shocked if this story is opening your eyes to what's really happening. Stacked in industrial-grade plastic bins. Organized by denomination. Wrapped in bank bands. $100 bills, $50 bills, 20s, all American currency. Agents began counting immediately, but the volume was overwhelming. Initial estimates put the amount at over $100 million. The cash filled one entire wall from floor to ceiling. But the money wasn't the most disturbing discovery. Along the opposite wall, agents found weapons. 473 firearms in total. AK-47 rifles still coated in factory grease. Romanian AK variants. Bulgarian arsenal models. PKM machine guns with linked ammunition. Dozens of Glock and Beretta pistols with filed serial numbers, 12 RPG-7 launchers disassembled and wrapped in oiled cloth. Cases of ammunition, 7.622x30 9mm, 5.5645 MEM, 9mm. Enough to supply a small war. Every weapon was cataloged, every serial number that remained was traced. The evidence would later show these weapons had been sourced from corrupt military depots in Bulgaria, Romania, and Ukraine. Purchased through intermediaries, shipped to Miami under false documentation. At the Hiley warehouse, the raid unfolded with more resistance. 2 security guards were present, both armed, both on Koronto's payroll. When agents breached the warehouse doors, one guard reached for his weapon. He was tackled within seconds, disarmed, restrained. The second guard surrendered immediately, hands raised, weapon dropped. Inside the 40,000 square foot facility, agents found what appeared to be a legitimate shipping operation. Forklifts, pallets, containers marked with commercial logos. But 9 units trained to detect weapons and explosives alerted on multiple containers. When agents opened them, they found concealment compartments built into agricultural equipment, false bottom crates, hollowed out machinery parts, more weapons, more ammunition, additional cash, totaling $63 million hidden inside sealed drums labeled as industrial lubricant. If you believe justice matters, hit like now. At the Coral Gables residence, Hassan Abdi Koronto was taken into custody without incident. Agents knocked at 4:53 a.m. Koronto answered the door in pajamas. Stunned, he said nothing. He was read his rights, handcuffed, and placed in a vehicle. Inside his home, agents discovered a personal safe containing another $12 million in cash, multiple passports, some diplomatic, some under false identities, encrypted communication devices that would take months to crack. On his laptop, investigators would later find spreadsheets detailing every transaction, every shipment, every payment made to corrupt officials. Koronto had kept meticulous records, likely as insurance or leverage. Those records would become the prosecution's roadmap by 6:30 a.m. All locations were secured. 7 individuals were in federal custody. Koronto, 2 warehouse managers, the 2 security guards, 2 Port of Miami employees who had accepted bribes. Assets seized included $290 million in cash, 473 weapons, 17 vehicles. Control of 12 shell company accounts holding an additional $96 million in various offshore banks. The scope of the seizure made it one of the largest financial and weapons busts in FBI Miami field office history. News broke fast. By 8:00 a.m. Local Miami news stations were broadcasting footage of federal agents loading plastic bins of cash into armored trucks. By noon, national networks picked up the story. The narrative that a diplomatic office had been operating a massive criminal enterprise sent shockwaves through Miami's port community. Immediate questions arose. How had this operated for years without detection? Who else was involved? How many weapons had already been shipped to conflict zones? Type justice below if you believe corruption must be rooted out wherever it hides. The human cost became clearer as investigators dug deeper. The weapons trafficked by Koronto's network had fueled violence in Somalia. Rival militias used them to destabilize regions, target civilians, and attack peacekeeping forces. The drug money being laundered had originated from heroin trafficking that destroyed communities across Europe and East Africa. The bribes paid to American officials had undermined the integrity of institutions designed to protect trade security. This wasn't victimless crime. Every weapon moved meant potential deaths. Every dollar laundered funded additional trafficking. Every corrupted official weakened the systems meant to keep Americans safe. Federal prosecutors moved quickly. Within 2 weeks, a grand jury in the Southern District of Florida returned a 47-count indictment against Hassan Abdi Koronto and his 6 co-defendants. Charges included conspiracy to illegally export defense articles, money laundering conspiracy, bribery of public officials, operating an unlicensed money transmitting business, making false statements to federal agents. The indictment detailed the entire operation. From the Bulgarian arms dealers who supplied weapons to the Kenyan logistics coordinators who arranged shipping. From the Miami port employees who falsified inspection records to the offshore bankers who concealed transactions. Koronto's diplomatic credentials were revoked immediately. The Somali government issued a statement claiming no knowledge of the criminal activities. They stated that Koronto had been operating outside his mandate. Whether that was true remained unclear. What was certain was that diplomatic protections had been exploited to shield criminal conduct for years. U.S. State Department officials launched an internal review of how diplomatic credentials are monitored and whether additional oversight mechanisms were needed. The 2 Port of Miami employees arrested faced the destruction of their careers and their freedom. Kenneth Rivers, a customs inspector with 12 years of service. Maria Gonzalez, a port security administrator. Both had received over $200,000 in bribes between 2021 and 2023. Rivers had falsified inspection reports to allow containers to bypass scrutiny. Gonzalez had provided advance notice of random inspections and helped route shipments through vulnerable checkpoints. Both faced federal charges. Trust inside the Port of Miami's administration fractured. Additional audits were ordered. Security protocols were overhauled. Share this so more people understand the depth of corruption that was uncovered. The financial investigation revealed layers of complexity that took months to unravel. The 17 shell companies used by the network had been registered using false identities and nominee directors. Money moved through accounts in the Cayman Islands, Dubai, Cyprus, Kenya, then reintegrated into the U.S. financial system through real estate purchases, business investments, and cash pickups. Koronto had purchased 3 residential properties in South Florida, 2 commercial buildings in Nairobi, partial ownership in a logistics company in Djibouti. All were seized under federal asset forfeiture laws. The weapons traced through surviving serial numbers painted a disturbing picture. At least 70 rifles had been stolen from Bulgarian military depots in 2020 during a period of reported inventory irregularities. 43 handguns matched a batch reported missing from a Romanian police armory in 2021. 31 M4 carbine rifles bore U.S. military markings. They were traced to a theft from a supply convoy in Afghanistan in 2018. These weren't black market knockoffs. They were military-grade weapons stolen from official stockpiles and sold to the highest bidders. Koronto's network had connected suppliers across 3 continents with buyers in one of the world's most unstable regions. Investigators also discovered that the network had been expanding. Encrypted messages on Koronto's devices revealed plans to open similar operations in Houston and New York, targeting ports with high shipping volumes and complex logistics that could hide illicit cargo. The Miami office was meant to be a model. If it hadn't been discovered, Koronto's organization could have grown into a nationwide network with international reach that dwarfed even cartel operations. Comment vigilant if you believe we must stay aware of these threats. The trial began in June 2024 in federal court in Miami. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence, financial records showing every transaction, intercepted communications revealing the conspiracy, physical evidence from the raid, testimony from cooperating witnesses, including Ibrahim Youssef, the warehouse employee whose courage had helped crack the case. Defense attorneys argued that Koronto was a legitimate businessman caught in a complex web of international trade regulations that the government had overreached. The jury didn't buy it. After 11 days of testimony and 16 hours of deliberation, Hassan Abdi Koronto was convicted on all 47 counts. In September 2024, he was sentenced to 38 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. The judge, in delivering the sentence, stated that Koronto had exploited diplomatic privilege to operate a criminal empire that fueled violence, corrupted officials, and undermined the safety of American ports and international stability. The 6 co-defendants received sentences ranging from 8 to 22 years. The 2 Port of Miami employees, Rivers and Gonzalez, pleaded guilty to bribery. They received 6 and 7 years, respectively. The money seized, $290 million in cash plus $96 million from frozen accounts, was designated for federal law enforcement asset forfeiture funds. Portions were allocated to the FBI, ICE, and ATF for future investigative operations. The weapons were destroyed. The properties were sold at auction. The shell companies were dissolved. But the case left lasting questions. How many other operations like this exist, hidden beneath the surface of legitimate business and diplomatic activity? How many other officials have been corrupted? How many ports remain vulnerable? The FBI estimates that thousands of weapons are illegally trafficked out of the United States each year, fueling conflicts and criminal violence worldwide. Hundreds of billions of dollars are laundered through American financial systems. The Koronto case was a victory, but it was one case among many. Hit subscribe so you don't miss how federal agents continue fighting these networks. The Port of Miami has since implemented enhanced screening protocols, increased random inspections, a dedicated task force to monitor suspicious shipping activity. A federal legislation has been proposed to increase oversight of diplomatic offices engaged in commercial activities. But the reality remains that the global networks trafficking weapons, drugs, and money are sophisticated, well-funded, constantly adapting. They exploit gaps in oversight. They corrupt officials willing to betray their oaths. They use the complexity of legitimate systems to hide criminal operations. This story is a reminder that threats don't always come from foreign enemies at distant borders. Sometimes they operate from offices on ordinary streets, protected by credentials, hidden by the complexity of systems designed for legitimate purposes. Vigilance isn't optional. Accountability isn't negotiable. When corruption takes root inside institutions meant to protect us, the damage spreads far beyond any single case. It erodes trust. It emboldens criminals. It makes us vulnerable. The Koronto network operated for years because it understood how to exploit weaknesses, diplomatic protections that shielded scrutiny, port complexities that hid illicit cargo, financial systems that allowed money to disappear across borders. But it was ultimately exposed because investigators refused to accept the obvious. They followed patterns. They traced money. They built a case brick by brick. And when the moment came, they executed with precision. If this investigation shocked you, comment your thoughts below. The battle against transnational crime continues every day, in ports, in financial systems, in communities across America and around the world. These networks don't rest, they adapt. They find new routes, new methods, new vulnerabilities to exploit. The only way we stay ahead is by staying informed. Stay informed. Staying aware, demanding that those in power are held to account. The truth is out there, but only if we're willing to look. Hit like so more people understand what was uncovered in Miami. Share this story so communities know what's really happening in our ports. Subscribe to see how federal investigations continue to expose the networks operating in the shadows. This case is closed. Hassan Abdi Koronto is behind bars. His network is dismantled. Millions of dollars and hundreds of weapons are out of circulation. But somewhere, another network is operating. Another official is being corrupted. Another shipment is being prepared. The fight continues, and the only way we win is together. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and never forget that justice requires constant effort. The story of Miami's Somali Port Authority is over. But the larger story of transnational crime and corruption continues, and we all have a role to play in exposing it.